Welcome to Higher Intelligence, smart takes on AI for the next generation campus. I'm JC Bonilla, EdTech executive, data scientist, and educator. Each week, we cut through the noise and decode what's actually mattering for your institutions. This means AI explained for higher ed colleges and universities. Let's get into it. Today, my friends, I have a question. Here's the question. Every enrollment leader should be thinking about this. What happens when you cannot hire your way out of the problem? The capacity, the problems are a misaligned equation. Applications are rising, staffs are already stretched. Students are expecting instant answers, usually at 11 p.m. on Tuesdays, right? Not during office hours. So today's episode is all about that. How does this take place? And the agentic journey that two amazing individuals will be sharing with us. But at the same time, we had a really interesting news in the AI world. Gemini with Genie 3 does a drop that changes the physical reality of what AI can do. The battle of the frontier models, OpenAI and Anthropic really dropping models within 20 minutes of each other and letting us know that the frontier of who's going to dominate this area, it's in front of us. And very interesting realities that affect how we start thinking about educational aspects of our students. We'll be talking about the AI tsunami as reported by the IMF, and how we should be thinking about retraining this new generation and students. But don't worry, I have experts on this talking with me today. So here's the point. Many institutions are still debating whether AI is the thing, but there's some institutions and practitioners who are already jumping on it. So they're training their people, they're measuring their performance, they're failing and succeeding with it. So today I'm joined by two awesome leaders in enrollment management who have deployed AI agents at scale, have a few incredible stories of success, a few not so much, and we're going to be spending about 40 minutes with them. So I'm joined by Brian Gann, Vice President of Enrollment and Student Services at Wave Tech Community College, and Justin May, Chief Officer of Enrollment Management at Richard Bland College. Gentlemen, welcome to Higher Intelligence. How are you doing today?
Hello, JC. Good to see you. Thanks for the opportunity to be here with you.
Yeah, doing great, JC. Good to see you.
As if you're actually looking at the feed in YouTube, you will know why Justin is here. It's pure looks, and you will know why Brian is here. Looks and accent. So I needed someone who looks like me and he sounds like me. What's the difference? Justin, just a younger, much better version of myself, and Brian, your accent is just 10 times better. But between all those things, your experience is actually what we're going to be attributing to. One of the stories that are going to come and unfold is, Brian, 52,000 applications, 8 live agents, and a goal of doing 20 by the end of the academic year. So that story is going to be very interesting. Justin, you have the most incredible background into arriving in your job in higher education, combining private experience, looking at KPIs differently. So your deployment of digital twins, which I hope you're going to come and explain a little bit, it's really important because there's an aspect of success in AI and going agentic that I think you also master. Before we do that, let's cover news. The train of AI is in front of us. And there's about 4 or 5 news that I'd like us to cover. And gentlemen, would like to take your takes and how you see them before we go into your specific journeys in your academic institutions. This week at Element, and I think, Brian, I saw you there. Justin, I don't know if you had the opportunity to benefit from it, but we did a whole seminar and webinar where, literally thousands of people came and listened to the road of becoming agentic. Last fall, I participated in a whole student experience in going agentic sponsored by ASU. And this past week, we get a whole articulation, in this case, an editorial from Higher Ed, that starts to declare that the agentic AI university has arrived. We know what this means, right? The benefit of going agentic, how chatbots becoming, goal-oriented, and they reasoned. It's an incredible promise. We understand the challenges. So in the first commentary, what I'd love to get you guys to react to is, you both are living it as well. You're going agentic. Does that match the reality on the ground? How do you land this articulation from many of us that universities are going agentic and the agentic university has arrived. Let's start with you, Brian.
I absolutely think the agentic AI university or college has arrived. I just have left in the last hour meeting with our care teams, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about care teams maybe through the day, but that's our advising, wraparound support, career development model. And what I said to the leaders in that room is this year is the year that you learn how to supervise agentic AI assistants alongside your advisors, your success coaches, your career coaches. So I think that notion is absolutely here. I really enjoyed Claire Zhao's keynote on day 2.
She's fantastic, huh?
Yeah, it was really good. And the visual that stuck with me was the org chart that she had, and that notion of hyper generalists and specialists and AI assistants. Yeah. And that very much looks like my org chart today. You threw the number 8 out there, and I've got a new number for you, which is 14. We're now live at 14 AI assistants, and the last 6 are in development. Thanks to our team, I want to shout out Rachel Devlin and Kathy Taylor because they're doing all the lifting at Wake Tech around developing those agents along with SMEs in the field. But yes, at my institution, it's absolutely here. And everything that goes with that, right? Change management, how we help people accept and adopt those. And I think there's tremendous opportunity, but as you mentioned, we processed 52,000 applications for admission last year. We cannot hire our way to scale. And so this for me is my clarion call for this year is we have to make this happen so that we get our folks some help. And that's absolutely what have been focused on for about 2 years now and will continue to focus on for the foreseeable future is how do we bring agentic AI to our teams so that we can scale to the very fortunate growth that we've had.
I love that so much, Brian, because throughout this conversation, we're going to start hearing a lot of your colors of going agentic, right? Which, in my understanding of you as a leader, you're looking, you're humanizing this technology and kind of bringing, I don't know if I should call it an HR, but a people angle on it because it's the real of what agentic kind of promises to do. Justin, what about you? What do you think of that statement? Universities are going agentic or agentic, the agentic university has arrived.
Yes, it has arrived. More for some than others. I'd say 20% are truly adopting the agentic AI model, while others are somewhat talking about it and maybe need to better understand the technology before deploying. There is that element of fear that's behind it, but there's a lot of excitement about what it can do. Brian alone had mentioned scale. Something that's really important for us over at RBC is going to be that personalized student experience, creating that momentum, ensuring that doesn't fall off. To hand that over to a counselor that does that manually, they can't maintain the consistency that's needed to be able to attract those consumers. So, becoming agentic AI processes and systems allows us to do that as well too. The exponential growth of this technology, I think, is really going to widen the gap from the early adopters to the laggards. And I know there's that old example, like if you take a piece of paper and fold it 40 times, it now reaches the moon. And that's how fast this technology is now moving. Our big focus was looking at, and I think the benefit is going to be those rev gen employees, those customer facing employees, the ones that are revenue protection, the student success, the ones that are revenue gen, going to be your admissions counselors that are out there shaking hands, creating relationships and awareness. Those are the ones that we're going to be able to offload 80% of those transactional duties and give that over to, or what we've done here, given that over to the agents themselves. So we've been able to increase market share. I think it was about 57% over the last 3 years.
Similar to Brian, and I want to give some things that I've learned from you as we had these conversations and we worked together, right? So Justin, the balance between momentum and exponential, what that means to me and everybody listening, right, is that keeping up, it's hard because the technology is growing exponential, right? But momentum is something that there's some tricks, I think, and in your playbook, Justin, how you speak of MVPs and all those type of things, it's how momentum is created and sustained. So we're going to get more into that later on. But to your point about exponential, let's go to our second story because just this past week, The world was taken by a storm from two important technological drops. So I'd like to talk about Google's Genie 3 as a simulator of reality. So for those of you who do not know what this means, right? Think about image generation. A lot of people are having fun right now with Nano Banana or with Sora. This is a very different departure to how vision is being created. So Genie 3, coming from Google, represents a fundamental departure on how language models produce video, right? It's not text prediction, right? It's actually a world simulation. So what does that mean? A normal LM, right? It's kind of like a nerd who has left the library, knows every textbook and knows all the theory, but has not experienced the world. This new technology, in a way, is interactive and is trained on the physical aspects of 3D environments, and is natively done for video. So what does that mean? Think about Waymo. Gentlemen, have you been on a Waymo? It's incredible. Have you had the opportunity to be driven by a car as opposed to an Uber driver?
Not yet. Justin
either? Oh, it's incredible. So the Waymo moment, think about it, right? So you get into a car. By the way, Waymo right now is $126 billion. It's doing so well, right? So a car picks you up. There's no driver. It takes you from point A to point B. To generate that, it's been years of training on data and accidents and non-accidents that have to take place. So now here comes Genie 3, and I can start creating edge cases that doesn't take place. For example, hey, how should you drive through a tornado? Hey, in my city has snowed 3 times in the past 100 years. So here's a snowstorm on city XYZ, gets trained. We're gonna go crazy here, but how should I drive when there's an elephant on the highway? I've seen that in India, by the way. We should talk about that in a different segment. But this is the brilliance of Genie 3 that creates, using AI to simulate a physical environment that doesn't exist, and the reality, the physics of it are deployed to next level. This was the missing piece. We didn't have that. There were some aspects, but really it's an incredible progress. So, Justin, let me start with you. What are you hearing through the lens of, oh, great, more technology now, it's 3D simulations, and I don't know. What does your brain think when you hear this type of story?
Yeah, I know sometimes it feels like we're drinking out of a fire hose with the amount of technology that's coming our way, but
we are.
Anytime I see any new tech, it's always a kind of a what's in it for me, what's in it for our students. And from this end and this application, I got real excited about is being able to think, how are we able to now take theory and allow our students to put it into practical application prior to actually graduating, where the rubber hits the road. Because we know in a vacuum, everything works perfectly. But it's when those students, they graduate to get into the real world, all these external elements are thrown their way, and they've got to critically think their way through it. So I believe that this is an environment that allows us to back a lot of that up as well too. And then another opportunity that we see, especially coming from the 2-year side of the house, is 51% of our kids don't know what they want to do once they actually come to college and or graduate. So from there is more of a career discovery component. So most kids grow up and do what their parents do because that's what they're familiar with, or they gravitate towards something they see on TV constantly because there's the familiarity. So you can't become what you don't see. So what we are able to create on that end is that what other options are out there. And I believe like this environment would allow somebody to immerse themselves and see what opportunities are available from there. So that was really my take from this.
You just gave me a use case that I could have used about 30 years ago when I finished engineering school, and everyone asked me, what is an electrical engineer? And the disappointment that my aunt had that I'm not going to fix their blenders or microwaves, because that's not what electrical engineers do. To today, when my parents and family, what do you do for a living? And I don't know how much wave signals I can do to try to explain what I do, but it's impossible for us to explain it. Very interesting example, and I kind of like that. Brian, where are you going with this Genie 3? What does that make you think?
Yeah, my immediate reaction was the workforce development opportunities in education.
You both go in the same place. I love it.
Yeah, and I went back to our, probably for all three of us, our video playing games of the flight simulators that we would play. Like, this is just taking that to the however many levels higher. But I also think about tools, like we have a lot of first responders that we train at our institution, and the ability to scale scenarios and scenes is one possibility. But I mean, Justin hit it right on the head. It is, how do you, we talk about how to give career exploration opportunities, and it just seems that this tool opens up a world of possibility that would never have been possible before, because we can give students and prospective students scenario opportunities. I think about welding simulators. Early in my career, I was a grant writer and a fundraiser, and we were always working to find welding simulators or mechatronic simulators. And so you can just see the scale of that becoming possible when you're not limited to that one machine that cost $250,000. But now it's scalable economically, it's scalable by the number of people that might want to use it. And I think it can really change the game around career exploration in education.
So interesting how you brought it home. Just really quickly, and then we go to the next one. So these positions, this type of technology in the teaching house, in the teaching side of the house, right? So faculty and whatnot. Quickly, do you see, back to my first question, do you see more advancement in going agentic on the teaching side of the house or in the operations side of the house? Where do you see we're farther ahead? Brian?
I think it's probably a little bit of yes and. Justin put that 20%, that the 20-80 principle out there pretty early in an earlier answer, and I think that's probably true. I see, just in my lens, talking with colleagues across the country, I see people who are ahead of us in terms of implementing agentic AI in operations, but I still think we're an early leader and an early adopter. And then I see people moving quickly in the classroom, and I see people very resistant in the classroom, and I see people resistant in the operational side too, right? So everything is on a continuum of that. My view is that it's probably a little bit easier for us on the operations, student-facing, student support side than helping people rethink curriculum, rethink learning outcomes, rethinking how do I assess, how do I teach, how do I utilize these tools, the working away from the fear of cheating, of plagiarism, of losing original thought. I think that battle is much harder inside the classroom than the work that what we're trying to do maybe outside the classroom and scale supports using agentic AI.
Justin?
Purely operational, we move at lightning speed. I feel like we're able to implement, we've got more adoption earlier on, similar to the faculty side of the house. You've got, a smaller percentage that are excited about it, implementing and using. It's something, I believe, from the faculty side of the house where faculty is seen as where what they're doing is more of an art. You kind of get the law of effort there as well too. If it's I'm able to produce something quickly, there's not as much value to it. So they're very old school. Keep in mind we are a liberal arts college as well too. So they're finding ways to be able to implement that. Our CAO, our chief academic officer, is very tech forward. So he's always introducing new ways, new pedagogy to be able to use AI, to be able to help reinforce what they're doing, to be able to mix the classroom up. Because at the end of the day, it's our responsibility to get these students prepared for a world that's going to be filled with AI, and change is going to be that only constant.
Yeah, I think I feel similar to you, both gentlemen, that in becoming agentic, as a trajectory, it's probably easier to reach those points through operations, the service delivery side of the house, as opposed to the teaching side of the house, for the things that we just discussed and multiple other reasons that we haven't. But my last news update, and love for you, both of you to give me your take. It's what I'm flaming like the coding modal supremacy, right? We have two powerhouses. OpenAI through GPT Codex 5.3, and then Anthropic with Claude Opus 4.6. What is happening here is that both of these algorithms are designed to take coding. We've been, in this industry, it's called, vibe coding and things like that. But literally, how AI, it's closing the gap from human manufactured software or code analysis to AI power one. And what has happened, it was so interesting, within 20 minutes, Claude drops Opus 4.6, and then the response from OpenAI dropping Codex 5.6, right? 20 minutes of each other. So the coding wars are officially on. If you come from my world, we default to Claude. In my prior episode with Ty and Sydney, it's all about how many of us are missing on the Claude aspect of analysis and code. And so I'm trying to convert as many people. But now Codex is really interesting. So let me just compare them. What is happening with Claude Opus 4.6 from strengths is that it's much better orchestration, like complex stacks, and you can go end to end. GPT Codex 5.3, pure software engineering. Things that I don't even speak, but code base and how you do the full aspect of code deployment, right? DevOps and things of that sort. Context window, how much is it able to retain and remember? It's a 5x increase on Claude Opus, so 1 billion tokens. So think about training or learning something that has 1 billion lines of code. That's a lot of code, by the way. Whereas on GPT Codex, it's more optimized in kind of niches of code, right? That's why it's much better at software engineering. Two important, in terms of benchmarks, they're doing fantastic, kind of beating everything, right? But some key innovations that it's important, it's in Claude Opus 4.6, it's multi-agent coordination. That's why it's end-to-end in complex stacks. You can have a agent doing the software, another one is basically understanding how good is the software, and then the other one creates the documentation. Whereas in Codex 5.3 is the first AI that drops and helps build itself and self-correct. So it's a really interesting deployment. So what does that mean? And then looking at both of you for your takes, the best coding model today is a GPT Codex 3, or it's coming from Claude. It doesn't really matter, but it's the pressure that it also is put into the academic institutions on how we teach CS curriculum, software engineering, and how we even use it, in my opinion. So I don't know if you guys are going to go there, but my first take on this is, my gosh, as a data scientist, and when I taught data science students, I taught them Python. Now I just don't need to teach them that, right? It's like, how do you create architectures, models, and how do you basically direct AI layers to do the analysis and the work for you? Gentlemen, what do you think of this, war of coding agents?
The modern day Coke versus Pepsi. I love it. I feel like every time we get a new drop, it's the first to market. So we'll constantly see this. I'm not going to speak from your lens because that's not my background, but it's more so is the different competitive advantages each one has. I see, as Brian mentioned earlier, is going to be similar to an employee. All my employees are different. They have different skills. They have different strengths. I use them differently to deploy different objectives. It's the same thing I would use for each one of these. But it sounds like both brands are really understanding their end user and what's important. So I'm wondering, they're moving away from the subscription capture to be able to increase, their market valuation. They're now able to lean in for loyalty. They know what their users are looking for, so they're starting to craft more of the things that they're looking for.
Love that.
I think what I'm always struck by is watching the meter study, right? The what is the length of time that each of these agents can continue to operate without human intervention, and that gap just continues to compound, right? It just gets longer and longer and longer. And so what does that mean as 6 months from now, 2 years from now? What will come forward? We've all probably read Matt Schumer's blog that's getting a lot of attention in the space this week, and talking about how much no longer is he doing coding because it's doing that coding, and what does that mean in other industries? What does that mean in education? What does that mean in finance? What does that mean in health? What does that mean in so many spaces? So I don't have a strong position around how the coding war works out. What I know is that it's going to move into other industries. That I think the other thing I would say, I talked a little earlier about the tremendous growth that we've enjoyed in enrollment, and we know we are fortunate in that. And we divide our majors into what we call 13 career fields. So it may be called meta majors or something similar at other places. 12 of those 13 meta majors went up in enrollment, and information technology is the one that's decreased. So students are hearing it, they're feeling it, they're trying to understand what that future is. So your question, JC, is spot on in terms of what do we teach? How do we teach? What is the future? Because this was and has been for a long time one of our most rapid growing career fields and meta majors. And so where are we going from here? I guess it's the question we all are trying to understand the answer to.
That indeed is the question. And where are we going from here? Not going to answer those, but in the time horizon of 4 years, such an interesting thing, right? That we could estimate what's going to happen 5 or 10 years from now. And I think, I don't know if I can estimate what's going to happen 4 months from now. Let's switch gears a tad. Thank you again for your takes on news. And what we love to now switch is your own specific realities through the lens of your institutions, your experts on student access mobility through the lens of, community colleges, and all the good and the bad that, it's in that sector. The magic aspect of how students are moving in their families and what they bring, and kind of moving forward to your academic spaces. Probably an integral part of our educational system. It's what you do. So again, thank you both. And so many times it gets missed under the 4-year classical university campus story. So I'm so excited to have the conversation through what does it mean to become agentic and deploying agentic workflows through the lens of your institutions, right? Before we go there, for those of you who are listening and you hear AI and agentic, I want to make the distinction, right? Agentic doesn't mean a chatbot. A lot of the versions of prompting or generative AI that gives you recipes. Like, we're talking about a reactive, adaptive, and reasoning type of AI that goes beyond prompting. It has a goal. The agent doesn't give you just responses. It has objectives. It has memory. Before I go into memory, what's an example? Like, a goal is, I need to get the student to complete their FAFSA. Right? I need the student to come and register for that event. It has memory. It doesn't forget the student in sessions over weeks. What does that mean? That a counselor could look into 4 years ago where the student was in their journey. It has a tool. It's able to come and say, I know how to register students in events. I know how to get a student to start a form. And of course, it plans the idea that the best way to sequence that and achieve the goal and orchestrate my memory and the tools is starting with an email and things of that sort. That in its nature is agentic. So the way I like to start the conversation was what I said at the top. You both had a really interesting perspective, right? And I'm going to throw the question at both of you. There are different questions, and I'm kind of let us riff. So, Brian, treating agents like employees. Fascinating concept, right? You've been saying since, we've been spending a lot of time together in the past month. Treat AI assistants like no employees who are growing and learning. What does that mean in practice? That's a fascinating statement. Like, love to understand what that means in practice. At the same time, before you go, because it's 2 questions and then we're going to rip here. Justin, the MVP approach. These startup principles that you master and in a way get deployed into higher education to be successful. Why? So 2 themes here. Let's start with you, Brian. Treating them like employees, and through Justin's lens, this idea of the MVP approach. Brian.
So we are thinking of agentic AI assistants as part of our team members. We have care teams is the structure that we've used for advising, wraparound support, career counseling. And so we are adding AI assistants to each of those teams, as well as to our major departments: undergraduate admissions, financial aid, the registrar's office, all of those big student-facing areas, and absolutely thinking about that in terms of new hire employees. And so new hire employees have to have a period of onboarding and training, and that's been our strategy for deployment around AI assistants, that there's a knowledge base that's built underneath those. Our CRM team takes the first pass at that work, does some pressure testing internally, We identify an SME in the department who's probably going to own and ultimately be the supervisor of that agent over time, and say, okay, you test it out, see what sounds good, see what's missing, and then we'll just widen that scope a little bit farther. And we've tried to work in sprints, so we've worked to develop about 4 agents in a 4-week time period, so that we've got a pace among ourselves, and so that's gotten us now to where we are.
I love that so much, Brian. Your concept of please, for everybody listening to this, don't overthink it. Humanizing the technology, right? But the aspect of delivering the promise of AI and the nurturing that is required, so growing and learning. Obviously, it's technology, so it doesn't have empathy, but it's about the knowledge base and those type of things. But the pairing with the human, fascinating. Can I ask you, have you thought about firing agents so you can grow? At one point, when you say you've done your duties, so we're gonna decommission you. Are you there yet?
We're not there yet. I'm glad to say we've not had to invite any of our agents to find success elsewhere so far. But I think an example though that could be, we started with one agent. His name is Adam, for academic advising.
Very biblical. Very biblical, Brian.
He's the first, right? So he's the first advising agent, and I can see a time in the future where Adam might be redeployed as we bring up AI assistants around each of those care teams, around each of those meta majors that are getting much more specific, digging in much deeper on career opportunities and career outcomes, on transfer opportunities, where we started with Adam to just build a knowledge base to help us understand what are students asking around advising, or what are the tasks that an AI assistant could take on in advising, just to give us some early pilot. I really work from that notion of the flywheel, that we have to go slow to go fast, and build that momentum. And so we in the care team deployment, we started with Adam, and he may get to retire or take on a new task in the future. We hopefully won't have to fire him, because he's been a stellar employee, shows up every day, does exactly what we ask of him, and knows exactly what we need him to know. So that's the good news.
24/7, they don't get tired. They're consistent, but still, maybe there's an opportunity to kick out Adam from the Garden of Wake Forest. Justin, your startup principles and really how you come with this approach with the MVP. Just walk me through that process. I just thought that was so simple, beautiful, and profound. An MVP approach and startup principles meets your methodology.
Yeah, startup principles meet the higher ed. Well, traditionally, as we all know, working in higher ed, things tend to move through a lot of red tape in order to get there. A lot of what you're now proposing is going to be outdated the 9, 10, 11 months from now, or they want too big of a data set to even prove that it works. Being that technology is working so quickly, our goal is to really meet students where they're at. In the traditional sense, the application or the enrollment process is filled with what? Anxiety, fear, nerves. It's not an enjoyable process for students. So we wanted to make that more of a defining moment, something that they're talking about to their grandkids and their kids, and then also ultimately to their friends. And that's driving additional referrals as well too. So in order to do that is just taking the processes that we had and being able to break it down and say, at what points do humans have to be involved? Which ones are these transactional ones that we could offload to an agent? And in the beginning, that was it. It was taking the smaller ones that we could say, hey, look, and a human does not need to be involved in these SMS email nudges here for transcripts. That's purely transactional. So in doing that, it's like, well, let's deploy to, let's A/B test this. Let's take a small segment. Let's test it for a month. Let's see what the results are. And then the data will speak volumes. And then from there, we just increase the overall data set itself, and we start to see more success. And then we move on to the next project. And as that grew into what we talked about previously, is that digital twin. I mean, we've got 16 agents now across, I looked earlier, it was like 2,200 different jobs we've run this recruitment cycle. So it's just compounding and compounding. So the AI agent grew out of the MVP, and now that's something that we've developed. That's what we're most excited about.
I have a question for you, but let me make sure that I understand this correctly. So the MVP kind of gives you the entry point. Is the digital twin something that happens across? Of once you do the human in the loop, the pairing, you know that is out of MVP land? Just help me understand, where are these two different things, or they're kind of a progression and a cumulative aspect in your deployment?
Think of it, I come from the days of Transformers, where small MVP projects built together created the AI, created the digital twin. So seeing so many successes and saying, okay, we've got these deployed in so many different areas. Can't we just make this one? Can't we just make this one person? And talking to the counselors, it's like, imagine having an executive assistant that's able to field your calls, your emails, schedule your appointments, confirm, make sure you're showing up. What would that do to get that time back for you? Well, increase market share. I can shake more hands. I can create more awareness. I can do the things that I love to do.
You mean a recruiter, common recruit, as opposed to spend time doing other things, right? An advisor,
Exactly.
do advisement. Yeah, I like that. Let me stay with you. One of the things I've been talking a lot to our teams that do AI enablement through Element, it's a framework, what I've called a T-shaped deployment. Your deployment realities are fascinating, right? So in a way, different but complementary, right? So if you're pairing, Brian, of the SME to an agent, in a way, looks like a digital twin in Justin's deployment. But here's the question. A T-shaped model means that I've had a win, maybe an MVP, maybe Adam. So now I need to see, what do I do next? So I can go horizontal, meaning I did this for events. So Adam is an expert on events, or my MVP is on events. So now let me bring this to the next thing adjacent to an event. How do you basically do campus tours? How do you do, in your process, how do I get the student to submit the application with all the documents so I can say yay, nay type of thing, and then move to the next stage, right? Because your admissibility is very different, right? So that's horizontal. Vertical means Adam becomes deeper. Your digital twins keep on going deeper. So within events, so now I'm going to do, I don't know, if you do an open house that you serve food, so I'm going to do the nutritional and dietary constraints. Within that, I'm going to take, a customized walk-in tour of the facility based on what I know. So you go in deeper. How do you think about the nuance of, I want more different use cases? Longitudinal, right? Going to different offices, for admissions, maybe jumps to the registrars or whatnot, versus horizontal and deeper. Justin, let's start with you now.
Yeah, I'm of the mindset now, deeper, and especially as we deploy the digital twins, we've created an environment where people now are accustomed and actually enjoy working with, the AI agents themselves. It's Gen Alpha, Gen Z. They're used to it. They're accustomed to it. They welcome it. But within that, to be able to create that hyper personalization that they're looking for, to ensure that we understand them, it's really creating more of a value prop that we're able to do. So our processes are relational versus transactional, or at least we sell the relationship. People they attend the school when they know you, like you, trust you. So when we can say, hey, JC, we know you're interested in X, you want to do Y, these are your concerns. So it required us to go back to our application and edit some of the things so we could create these personas that we had. It drops them into the persona. And I know, based upon our application submitted to admitted, a student needs at least 13 and a half contacts before they make that shift. And it's got to be within 21 days. So within those 21 days, they fall out, and our time to lose is beyond that. Within admit, it's 24 days. So we've based upon previous data, we've been able to take the amount of contacts, the average, our time to win, be able to divide it by stage, and then, let's say, inject those inputs into the agent itself, so they know at which pace and consistency to be able to contact and how to contact.
Love that. Brian, same question. How are you thinking about your 14 agents for the 15? Is it longer or deeper? Is Adam becoming more knowledgeable, or is there Noah coming, or I don't know, any other biblical figure that you may want to throw?
I think of it as yes and, JC, because
you only get two yes and in this conversation, so you're tapped out already.
All right. Well, for me, it's a cycle. So we're going to go wider right now. I know the more data inputs that I can bring to those AI assistants, the better that they then can go deeper. And so for me, one of the next areas of expansion is going to be student life, student activities, because I need to know how engagement looks, and we need the agents to know what engagement looks like. The more that we know about that engagement, then the deeper that we can go to see better signals on who is not feeling belonging at the campus, who does not feel like they fit at the institution. And so I've got to have a cycle of where I go wider and then I go deeper and then I go another step wider. I've got to then bring in tutoring and learning into what the AI assistants can see. And so it's just a repeating cycle. It is implementation is never finished. It is just we continue to evolve and we continue to get better. I'm going to go wider and then I'm going to go deeper and just keep that cycle going.
One more question here before we go to the next section. So on your deployment realities, sure, Justin, you're the Chief Enrollment Officer. Brian, you're the VP of Enrollment Student Success. Your tentacles and your influence in the academic institutions you represent are big and large and at the top. So yeah, you can come and say, I go deeper, Justin, I go wider, Brian. But now I'm JC, I'm just basically a, CRM admin, and I'm crushing this agentic stuff, but I look up and there's a Brian up there. What's the advice? Go deeper, go wider. Generalize it. I know that it's context specific, but what do you think is the better deployment? I have one agent that works. Do I look horizontal, wider, or do I go deeper?
I'm going to defer to Brian's answer, yes and. No, I think it's dependent upon the school. The reality is, and this is what most professionals don't do, is shop their own processes. Where are the biggest bottlenecks, and what's the one thing that can be removed? So is it something that requires some breadth of knowledge and personalization? If so, then you go deep. If it's something that is just very transactional and it's a removal of that bottleneck, opens up the floodgates, well, then maybe that's the fix. But I think every institution is different. We look at it through the lens of the curse of knowledge. We think students know everything we know and they see everything we see, when in reality they know none of that. So in being able to come through and just, when's the last time you submitted an application? How quickly are your people calling you back? What do the emails look like from your cell phone? When you hit the links, are they actually working? When you call, are people answering? It's those simple fundamental things that essentially are our first impression that so many schools are failing at. And that's where I think a lot of these agents can immediately be plugged in and fixed.
I think the thing I would speak to there is you made that notion of kind of where we sit in the organizational chart. And so if I were talking to other chief enrollment officers, my advice would be that you need no distance between you and that CRM administrator. That should be as close to you in your organization as you can make it. I think that if you're going to make this work, it needs to be right next to you in your org chart so that you can help guide the ship, so that you can help say, now we go wider, now we go deeper. This help and have a roadmap in front of you. We've developed about a 6-page roadmap for implementation as we think across all the different sectors of where this work touches us, from prospecting to the application process, post-admit processes, post-admit advising, wraparound support. How do we look at all that and just keep that in front of you to help make decisions? Because to Justin's point, it's going to look different by institution type, by size, by resources that are available. And so my advice to anybody who's leading enrollment, who's relying on this kind of work, is you need to be as close to it. This needs to be a priority of your time, of your hours, of your thoughts, of your planning, of your strategic planning. Don't delegate this to someone else. It needs to be right next to you.
Yeah, I second that 100%. I think a lot of times we're used to just signing off on a project, handing it off to somebody else and expecting it's like a set it and forget it. When in reality, in creating these SEMs and priority goals for years to come, the individual making those decisions needs to fully understand the implications of agents, agentic processes, the CRM itself, and what's coming down the pipeline. So as we know, it's a constant reading up on stuff.
And I think that also lets you take the temperature in the room among your teams. You can have that sense of where can you push, where do you need to hold back, how do you know how to steer the ship. And I think that really can give leaders the insight into having that information.
Well, speaking of the temperature in the room, one of the common temperature readings is the one of fear and trust. So I'd like to move us to overcoming fear. 8 out of 10 conversations in my AI practice with higher education professionals and leaders, it's I don't trust it, I got fear, there's something uncomfortable as we go agentic. Never mind agentic, it's just deployment of AI. Justin, I got this from my notes. 80%, you said 80% are fearful of AI adoption, 20% are excited. I think you're right on the money. So starting with you, what have you done, Justin? How do you overcome the fear? How do you handle the variable of fear in the adoption equation? What has worked?
Leading with empathy for sure. I think a lot of change, well, this is just simple change in management principles. It's typically top down, where somebody from the top sees the value in purchasing, the technology itself, and then they're telling somebody else to implement without explaining the actual why. So they're telling them the what. And when somebody doesn't understand how they're involved into the future, they get scared and they grasp onto the past because it's self-preservation. I mean, it totally makes sense. But I think when they better understand the role and you seek advice and you include them throughout the decision-making process, where it's building processes, understanding how this can benefit them, selling the what's in it for them. Hey, imagine if I can give you more time back. Imagine what you're going to be able to do. I can tell you right now, when I went to the counselors and we started engaging them in conversations, and I told them, hey, you get to make less phone calls. You don't have to update the CRM as much. They were screaming, how quickly can we deploy this thing? Because these are tasks, these transactional tasks doesn't fill their cup. That's not why they signed up to become enrollment counselors. So we're essentially allowing them to do more of what they love, which then, you see an employee productivity increase, you see overall retention increase. They're happier, the culture, everything tends to work in harmony at that point. So, celebrating those small successes earlier on, continuing to build on those, communication. I'm
looking for my early champions that are at the peer level with where that fear may be originating. I mentioned earlier this morning, I met with we had our care team professional learning days happening today on campus, and great to have all those people in a room. And I talked a little bit about AI, and I'm sure that's helpful for them to hear. But then the person behind me was an advisor who's been using agentic AI, who's been using some of these tools, and could say to their fellow advisors, hey, I've been piloting these tools and I think it really works. And you just feel the room lighten a little bit when you can hear that. I think trying to be responsive to that fear, leading with empathy, absolutely, Justin is right in that for sure. I think that we need the early champions to make the flywheel turn, and I think finding those on your campus, elevating them, celebrating their wins, and I think it feeds excitement, it feeds opportunity, and then that feeds adoption.
One of my favorite quotes from Brian, it's, what's it called? Spreadsheet, duct tape, and prayers.
Excel, duct tape, and prayer, JC. Yeah, Excel, right. Duct tape, and prayer. That was our CRM before our current tool. So, yeah.
Which alludes to the idea that, things are not perfect, and sometimes they're Frankenstein of technologies, right? And here comes this new technology, and there's mistrust and whatnot, and 100%, the champions, the empathy, being in the weeds, all the things you mentioned are important. So what I like to get your take on is a project is launched, whether it's an MVP, whether it's through a champion, Brian used the word pilot, and it failed. I mean, it'll be immature of me to think that you all have 100% hit rate from your MVPs and your pilots. It's impossible. I mean, if you're the best enrollment professional in the world that I've met. That's when I look at the counter, these Frankenstein spreadsheets, duct tape, and prayers type of thing. So how do you balance those? The pilot, the experimentation didn't go well, and then demoralizes the team, the trust fear comes back on, and then when I look back, I have this other thing that it just ain't perfect either. So tell me a little bit about this context and how you've done that in the past or how you think about doing it.
for me, I start with beginning with the end in mind, and that's not original to me. Of course, we've heard that for a long time, but our notion around that has always been pilot to scale. It's not pilot to say, yes, we go forward, or no, we don't. It's pilot to learn what worked. Because I think in almost any pilot, something works and maybe something else doesn't quite land the way you thought, but then that's the tweak, right? One of my very dear friends, Melinda Karp, uses the analogy of pancakes, right? And so if we put the first pancake on the griddle, we may have to get the heat not right. It may be a little bit too brown. It may not be quite done enough. But we adjust the controls, we adjust the settings, and when we put that second pancake down on the griddle, now we've got some breakfast, right? And I'm making you hungry with this analogy. That's what I always try to do, is make people want breakfast with this analogy, right? And so I think piloting to scale is always my philosophy. I know where I want to finish in the end, and so we may have to make tweaks, we may have to make adjustments, but all we're doing in those pilots is learning what really works well, and then we can adjust as we get ready to go into the next phase and the next phase and the next phase. And that's how we approached redesigning academic advising. It's how we've approached launching agentic AI, and it's how we'll approach the next big opportunities in front of us, wherever they take us.
Nicely said.
Yes to everything Brian said. I mean, failure is feedback for sure.
I know, right? You're like, whatever he said.
Yeah, no. And it's, so earlier I mentioned like the transactional versus relational side. We're trying to create more of a relational process for our students. But one thing that we were unable to do, just because of the increase in, say, the inquiries and the app started that we had, is they could really only contact people that were applying same day. So it overloaded them with the amount of calls and tasks that they had to take. So we offloaded the intro calls to the new inquiries that were coming in and the application started. Well, come to find out, students don't want to have a relational conversation with an AI bot as of yet. Talk to me about your goals. How does that make you feel? What are your concerns? There just isn't much substance there. So that was a failure. But from that, we realized that we need to create like the human sandwich. It's the human on the front end to start and create the relationship itself. The AI agent, the agentic process, kind of do everything else, and all the defining moments in between. That's where the human is just picking it up and just continuing to grease the wheels.
Love that. Gentlemen, this conversation has been incredible. I can keep on going. I'm going to give you a combo question to wrap us up. In the spirit of what's next. What's next? And as you think about what's next, if I could combo this as a leader, right? And someone who's watching reports to you or it's mentored by you, they look up. What do you tell this person? You should be doing this, but hasn't started yet, type of thing. So where do they begin or anything? So what is next in your head? And also speak to that person who's listening and they're either getting started with this process.
What's next is continuing on with the digital twins and student success. A good area of opportunity for us is student retention, creating that belonging, that engagement while they are here, increasing the lifetime value of our student while they're on campus. With that being said, we are in the starting stages of creating a career counselor that's able to reach out to students when they've missed 2 consecutive days of classes, their GPA drops below a certain point, they're not submitting work. So we're starting to navigate that. So that is what's next for us, to be able to move what we've done on the admission side into student success. So hopefully we have the process going through the entire student life cycle. As far as advice for somebody that's ground up looking at what we've done, it's do exactly what we did, start small. It's like stacking bricks and creating a strong foundation. Every week we're stacking another brick. And it just happens to be that you're looking at us 3 years beyond where we started. So it looks like we have a nice structure. With that, test, and test some more. We have found that, what you're putting into the actual agent and telling it what to do has the biggest impact on the perception of your institution itself. That is your first impression. So treat it and make sure that knowledge base is updated and constantly be reviewing it. And I mentioned this earlier, and I think this is really important because I just submitted 3 more last week, is consistently shop your processes. It's things change as we continue to add agents. And I have found sometimes an agent will go off with what it is that they're saying, and we've got to correct it. So it's just making sure that that you're inspecting what you expect.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of amazing opportunity ahead. This technology, and I've heard you say this, and others of your peers, it's as bad as it's ever going to be. It only gets better from here. And so, how do we continue to be responsive to that? How do we continue to make the best use of that? I think at the high level of institutional leadership, what's next is continuing to fully integrate agentic AI and the tools that come with Element 451 as our CRM to really help then at the individual level have the best information in front of an advisor or a coach to know what a student needs, to help us see deeper, more quickly into that data. And then I think for us across the organization, it's really about making this the system of work. If the SIS is the system of record, if the LMS is the system of learning, then the CRM needs to become the system of work so that we have as many people as possible bringing data points in that tell us the complete picture of a story that a student doesn't have to tell themselves. And so that ultimately this is an economic development story. This is a social mobility story. And it's all being helped at the capacity of AI assistance because we can't hire our way to capacity. We can't get there. And so we have to make that turn. The advice to somebody wanting to start is go. The best time was 5 years ago, and the second best time is today. And so go, right? I mean, we've all heard Warren Buffett talk about the power of compounding. And how much being in matters. And so you're not too late. This is still very nascent in what's happening overall. And you have time. If you feel like there's a moat getting in front of you, you have time to close it. But you need to go and take advantage of the power of the compounding of the knowledge, the compounding of the technology, the compounding of it spreading across your organization, so that you can help more students. And so it becomes your workforce development story. It becomes your social mobility story too. Just go. Put your fear aside, pick it up, take it for a test run, put the first pancake on the griddle and go.
Gentlemen, incredible display of wisdom, good looks, and just basically appreciate so much your stories, your effort, and what you're doing here. Let's bring it home. And let's wrap this up. So this week, we saw AI in its landscape shift yet again. Models, world models, coding models, all these things in our front door, putting pressure on academics, putting pressures on the job market. And the real story, as we unpacked it, right, isn't the technology, right? Is how we, institutions, campuses, businesses are responding to it. Brian, Justin, love that you're not waiting for the perfect solution. You're actually deploying it, learning, iterating, and going, right? You're treating agents like employees, onboarding them like digital twins, embedding them in your teams, and that's probably how you're getting ahead. As it was discussed, an 80-20 split, 80% fear, 20% excitement. That's real, but that is not the constraint. If anything, fear is not a strategy. And what I can leave with is an institution like the ones you are part of and the enterprise and teams that you're leading stand out because you understand this aspect of student to scale or pilot to scale, and that's kind of where it's at. So learn so much from you guys. Really appreciate your time here, and thank you for what you do. So that's it for this week. I'm JC Bonilla, and this is Higher Intelligence, smart takes on AI for the next generation campus. Justin, Brian, thank you so much.
Pleasure, JC. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Higher Intelligence. This show is part of the Enrollify network, home to the largest collection of podcasts in higher education. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow. You can find more podcasts, webinars, videos, blogs, and more. Visit Enrollify.org and subscribe to get new content sent directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the AI agent platform for higher education. Learn more at element451.com.